Now for our next conversation, it is a fireside chat about the travel technology oligopoly. To lead this conversation will be my colleague and mentor, another moderator, Mr. Brian Summers. He's the founder and editor of the Airline Observer, and I would like to bring him on stage with Alex Manns, the CEO and founder of FLYR Labs. Gentlemen, on stage, please. Thank you.
That was a great session. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning.
I understand you flew here today just to visit us?
I just flew in on the 6 a.m. arrival, 19 hours from JFK.
Was it the best flight of your life?
It was a great, I'm a huge aviation geek, so if you put me on the longest flight in the world, I will take it any day of the week.
I love that. All right, so look, I have known you for a long time. We all see your branding, FLYR, all over the place. We see your salespeople. But I think there's a lot of people in the room, and sometimes I feel like one of them that aren't exactly sure what your company does. So what do you all do?
Great. Well, great question. Well, thank you for being here, for inviting me on stage, and good to see everybody, familiar faces. Let me start taking one step back. Travel, airlines alone are approaching about $1 trillion in terms of total kind of gross opportunity right now. Yet somehow the airline industry feels very much like it is advancing at a slower technological pace than any other industry in the world, even banking, arguably even healthcare. So what we try and do at FLYR is we try and address what we call mission critical capability that we believe is holding back the industry. And when I say holding back, I mean legacy systems, legacy standards, and protocols by which we communicate. And so there's 3 areas of focus for us. One, improving decision making, particularly using AI. I've been doing that for many years. 2, enabling better modern customer retailing experiences on kind of the front end. And then 3, enabling these ever more complicated experiences for customers to be fulfilled in the back end, the reservation system, the system of record. That's really where we focus as a company.
All right. Can you give me like a concrete example of a problem that you can solve? If I'm a commercial executive in an airline, I'm having something is not working right, what can you solve for me?
Well, maybe to take the front end, the experience example. Today, the experience that customers experience when they book a flight, change a flight, web, mobile, kiosk, hasn't really changed for over 10 years. Right? And the main reason for that is the disconnect with the downstream reservation systems and what they are able to do. One thing that we help solve for Aviation, for example, is we implemented a booking engine layer on top of their existing downstream infrastructure, on top of which they were able to build modern web and mobile experiences and kind of unconstrain or unlock their ability to develop the experience for the customer from the limitations of their back office. It's one example.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of these airlines are 10 years behind. How do they catch up and then go on so that they're ready 10 years from now?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think there's a couple of, first of all, there's a couple of false narratives, I believe, in the industry, right? We're all stuck to these legacy formats, PNRs, EMDs, electronic tickets, artifact-based messaging for those in the room that are familiar with it. And we're using those as kind of an example of why we cannot change. The reality is that's not necessary, right? So I think in order to do this migration, you need to create kind of a middleware that is able to be fully backward compatible with the legacy world of PNRs and of the GDS, right, and of artifacts. But that kind of unconstrains the airline from developing its direct channels, from developing its NDC connectivity, from inviting partners to participate in their experience, hotels, activities, car transfers. So you have to kind of create this bridge. You have to create this translation layer. And that's what we've been very focused on in recent years to kind of help bridge that gap as a first step.
So presumably you meet people out in public and you tell them what you do. And then they probably tell you, I had this really bad experience on an airline. You're not going to believe it. It just doesn't make any sense. Like when you talk to your friends about why this business is so antiquated, how do you explain it to them? And do you actually tell them that it's going to get better?
Well, one example that I always love to use is that as an industry, we still store customer booking data as flat text in a PNR, right? And in order to add new products, we have to go through these complicated steps that are written into text again, into this PNR. It's like you're back in the 1970s with comma delineated files instead of modern database structures. Right, so that's how I describe it. Like the airlines' core systems of record haven't yet evolved to a modern database, effectively, holding back what we can actually use them for.
Okay. So I know you're a privately held company. You don't say much about what goes on, but I'm curious, do you have any like success stories of a client that you can tell us about, and maybe people out in the audience, like they want to know how their revenue is going to improve? Like anything quantifiable that you can tell us about how this all works?
Yeah, so all of our products, right, so decision-making, reservation system modernization, and kind of customer experience are targeted at lowering the airline's cost base, increasing their revenue, and gaining more capability. That the future ready. That's always true for all of our product lines. Some examples of things I'm really proud of. So I mentioned Avianca. We were able to overhaul their front-end channels, web, mobile, etc., and put in place an infrastructure that is ready for the future, even though it is still sitting on top of what came before. We have a great relationship, given that we're in APAC, with Air New Zealand. Together with Air New Zealand, we developed a brand new deep learning-based revenue management system for the network. We developed a last mile pricing mechanic to answer billions of pricing requests every single day. We've expanded that in areas like cargo. But I would say that the customers generally that work with us are those that see a future that is materially different from the present and recognize that they have to shake some things up and work with some new parties like us to help change that.
All right. Well, we heard earlier from Tony, he gets to start a clean sheet airline, right?
Yep.
So it's all going to be about personalization.
Yep.
What do you see as the next frontier for personalization in this industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think there's a couple of examples, practical examples I can give of things that we do today. So in Germany, Condor is one of our clients, and there we enable them to place a flight and a connecting rail ticket on the exact same booking and itinerary and confirmation, for example. So interlining between multiple modalities, effectively. The ability to introduce non-air product activities, right? Tony was talking about Alula, right? Like they're building a new carrier to provide access to the kingdom and then access to what is in the kingdom. Right? It's a great example. Those are products that you want to introduce into the experience, and you want to be able to personalize to the extent that you understand who is the traveler. What are they interested in? Is this business? Is this for family? Is this for tourism? Today's systems do not allow you to easily decide who you're dealing with, and they also don't allow you to present the products that you as a traveler actually want. Those are the things that we enable.
But you don't have to be a brand new airline to do that, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got your start forecasting for revenue management, right?
Yep.
So it's now 2024. Airlines have all kinds of information, all kinds of data about past travelers and what people want to do and where they want to go. Why do airlines still mess this up sometimes?
Well, I think that's the human in the loop mostly, where that goes wrong, to be honest. However, I do think, so we were founded as a revenue management focused deep learning AI company years ago, right? Long before it became interesting to be an AI company. We've expanded that beyond revenue management. So we're also doing things like outcome forecasting, right? So forecasting revenue and load performance across the network down to a singular flight. So you can help better plan your fleet strategy, up or down gauge when appropriate, determine where you should spend your marketing dollars. We've evolved quite a bit in that area. But we're still doing revenue management, of course. We're doing it across fares, ancillaries. We're helping decide how to dynamically bundle products into a dynamic fare brand. Another example of personalization. So yeah, we've evolved quite a bit, and that is still a core tenet of our business, in addition to the experience and the reservation system side.
Okay. We go to these conferences all the time, and the letters AI always get trotted out, often by people like me who don't know much about it. But you're a technologist, like you know this stuff really, really well. How is AI going to change the airline industry?
So you mentioned earlier that we have huge amounts of data in the airline industry. And where I find that AI has the greatest potential is in places where there is huge amounts of data available, preferably collected, which is actually a challenge for airlines, but where it goes heavily underutilized, right? So if you look at all these different industries that are trying to come up with how to apply AI, it is the ones where there's the greatest discrepancy between how much data is or could be available and how it is currently utilized. And I think, as such, I think airlines are like an order of magnitude greater in terms of potential impact of AI than some other industries where data is already more readily available. So we very much focus on helping airlines collect and manage all this data in a structured manner. We help them forecast outcomes to make better decisions, and we help them optimize decisions such as pricing or what you should be selling.
So is AI going to change the airline industry as much as other industries, more or less? What do you think?
The airline industry is not just digital, right? There's metal we're dealing with. So the physical product, of course, is really, really important, and the way that evolves is independent from the digital side of it. But I think on the digital side, we're going to see dramatic changes over the next 3 to 5 years. We're going to start seeing airlines operate as much more sophisticated merchandisers, right? So more like Expedia and less like your neighboring airline. That's going to be a meaningful difference. We're going to see airlines harness the power of their loyalty programs, not just in terms of their value, but also in terms of how it can cater to the needs of a traveler. We're going to see massive changes in how content is distributed, not just shifting more towards direct channels, but also kind of creating sub-marketplaces where airlines between each other and with third-party vendors can exchange content. So we're going to see a lot of change, and AI is going to help drive that change and surface the right products to the right traveler, very much so.
You talk about how a lot of airlines, the number one job, right, is to move metal around the world. When you go into these airlines and you talk to commercial executives, is it hard to persuade them that really they're retailers that are also running airlines? Or do people understand?
Well, so if you ask an airline if they want to save 1% on costs or make 1% more on revenue, they're probably going to go for the cost before they go after the revenue, right? So, and that heavily ties to the fact that they're operating very expensive operation with very slim margins in normal times. However, I do think that most airlines, especially post-COVID, are realizing they have to get on this train that's leaving the station to become a modern retailer, because the traveler is starting to expect more and more. And every other retailing experience, whether it is buying something from Instagram or Amazon, those experiences are deviating rapidly from the status quo experience that we're getting from airlines, right? And I think that's going to drive airlines to kind of catch up and really force themselves to make that transition.
Thank you. All right, so I've known you for a long time, and I've actually admired your work for a long time. And one thing that I've heard from other people is that you are really, really smart. And you've chosen to start a tech company, not that focuses on all types of industries, but the airline industry. And I'm an airline nerd myself. I assume you have to be as well, right? Like, why did you choose not to solve the problems of healthcare, but of airlines and travel?
So I learned to fly before I learned to drive. So I spend my weekends with family and grandparents at the airfield when I was young. I'm a huge aviation geek, of course. But I also recognize that after the title of this talk, there's a bit of an oligopoly. And I have great respect for the massive businesses that have been built in this industry. But at the same time, oligopolies, and the definition, just to be completely clear, is a market with limited competition. As it relates to mission-critical systems, you're going to see a slowdown of innovation. You're going to see a loss of pricing power on behalf of the airline or the customer. And to me, that creates an interesting opportunity to kind of jump in as a third or a fourth force, depending on how you count. And that's really what we're trying to do at FLYR. I love difficult and hard challenges, right? So this industry is challenged by, you need a lot of capital to go after these mission-critical systems. FLYR has raised hundreds of millions of dollars from BlackRock, WestCap, Vista, and others. You need to be able to manage change, which is complex, people, process. And you need to be able to survive long sales cycles, which most startups cannot do, right? And we chose to go after 3 mission-critical areas of business for airlines. We're now 700 people. And I like that challenge. I like doing what everybody says is impossible. I get energy from people telling me I'm going to fail. I've been hearing that for 8 years. Still here, still growing. So that drives me very much.
They must not tell you you're going to fail at this point, right?
Some of them definitely would like to do so.
All right, we have about a minute left. I'm going to ask you the same last question that I asked to Steve Hazy late last year at a conference like this, because he's been doing this for like 50 years. And he told me that he still loves flying and getting on an airplane. Are you like me? Are you as excited to fly on a morning like today as you were when you were a kid?
My excitement starts going onto Seat Guru, checking out the seat maps and picking the right seats, and then using Expert FLYR to set a tracking alert to make sure that the optimal seat comes available and switching it when it does. But I think fundamentally, the way I would describe the experience of flight for myself is it's magic, right? And what I mean by that is your wheels leave the ground, and by the time they touch down, you're in a different place on the other side of the earth, 19 hours later, in my case, this morning, where you have different people, different cultures, different arts, different natural environments, different food. And the fact that that is possible in a small amount of time, like a flight, is absolutely incredible. And as long as I can keep experiencing that, I'm going to keep drawing energy from it as well.
Thank you, Alex. This was a great discussion.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
All right.